Akosua stood under the massive baobab tree, her colorful Ken dress flowing in the warm breeze. The golden sun was setting, casting a magical glow over the village. In her hands, she held a strange package wrapped in old cloth. Her heart raced with curiosity. What could it be? No one had ever seen such a thing before, and the villagers whispered about it in hushed tones. Akosua felt a chill run down her spine. This package was different, it had an energy to it, as if it held a secret waiting to be discovered. But what was the secret? As she examined the package, the wind suddenly picked up, rustling the leaves around her. It felt like the baobab tree itself was watching her, urging her to open the package. But Akosua hesitated. What if it was something dangerous? The village had been through so much lately, and this mysterious gift could change everything. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the quiet village. The only sound was the distant chatter of the villagers, oblivious to what was happening beneath the ancient tree. She took a deep breath, ready to face whatever mystery awaited her. Kwame stood at the center of the village path, his maroon agbada billowing around him. He looked strong and confident, his arms crossed, as a group of villagers whispered behind his back. His piercing eyes glinted with wisdom and authority. Kwame was the leader of the village, and though he was young, he had earned the respect of everyone. But something troubled him. The village was changing, and not all of the changes were good. Strange events had been happening, and the villagers were starting to feel uneasy. As he walked along the path, Kwame thought about the mysterious events unfolding in the village. Rumors of curses and strange happenings had begun to spread, and there were whispers of a dark force that had taken hold. He needed to get to the bottom of it, but he couldn't do it alone. He needed the help of the villagers, and Akosua. She seemed to be at the center of it all. The golden sunset behind him seemed to be a sign of hope, but Kwame knew that hope alone wouldn't be enough. They would have to face the unknown together. Oma stood near the bustling marketplace, her blue encore top and skirt matching the lively colors around her. She nervously clutched the secret letter behind her back, her heart pounding. No one knew about the letter, except for her and the person who had sent it. As she walked through the busy stores, her mind raced. What would happen if someone found out about her secret? The people around her were too busy to notice, but Oma couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. She had been asked to do something important, but she wasn't sure if it was the right thing. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a familiar voice calling her name. She spun around, her heart skipping a beat. It was Akosua, her best friend, who had been acting strangely lately. Was it the necklace? Oma couldn't help but wonder if Akosua knew more than she was letting on. The secrets of the village were beginning to unfold, and Oma couldn't help but feel like she was caught in the middle of something much bigger than herself. Kwabena, the elderly man, sat alone on a hill overlooking the village. He gripped his wooden walking staff tightly, his face filled with worry. The village had always been peaceful, but now, the air felt heavy. The crops were withering, and the animals seemed restless. Kwabena had seen many seasons come and go, but he had never felt this way before. The curse was real, he was sure of it. And it was only a matter of time before the village would fall into darkness. He had tried to warn the others, but they didn't believe him. The younger generation was too focused on the outside world, on things that didn't matter. They were forgetting the old ways, the traditions that had kept their village strong for generations. Kwabena knew that something had to be done, but what? He closed his eyes, praying for guidance, hoping that the spirits of the ancestors would give him the answers he so desperately needed. Esai stood by the river, her bright batik dress fluttering in the soft evening breeze. She was holding a basket filled with colorful fruits, her eyes scanning the area. She felt uneasy, as if someone was watching her. And then, she saw it, a shadowy figure behind a tree. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching her. ESI's heart raced. Who was it? She had been meeting with the city men in secret, bringing gifts and coins to show her loyalty. But now, she wasn't so sure. Was it worth the risk? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her actions might be leading the village toward a terrible fate. As the shadowy figure stepped out from behind the tree, ESI's fears grew. She had to act quickly. But there was no turning back now. The city men had promised her wealth and power, things she couldn't have in the village. But she wasn't sure if the price she had to pay was worth it. Would her choices destroy the village and everyone she loved? That night, a group of girls gathered in secret. Their faces were filled with excitement, but also with a hint of mischief. They were talking about city life, about the lights, the noise, and the freedom that awaited them. The village was no longer enough for them. They wanted more. They wanted attention. They wanted to be noticed by the city men. The girls whispered about the things they could do, the lives they could have. But not all of them were sure. Some still felt the pull of the village, the pull of the traditions that had kept their ancestors safe for generations. As the girls talked, a sense of unease settled over them. They knew that their actions might have consequences. The village elders had always warned them about straying too far from the old ways, but the girls didn't want to listen. They were young, full of dreams and desires. The tension in the air was thick as they made their plans, unaware of the danger they were inviting into the village. The village square was quiet as Akosua and Oma stood face to face. Akosua was holding a beautiful necklace, its glowing charm lighting up the dim evening. Oma, on the other hand, had a suspicious envelope in her hand. Both of them knew that something important was happening, but neither of them was sure what. The necklace, with its magical powers, had already begun to cause tension between them. Akosua wanted to use it to end the curse, but Oma was unsure. "What is it you're hiding, Oma?" Akosua asked, her voice calm but sharp. Oma looked down at the envelope in her hands, then back at Akosua. She didn't want to lie, but she wasn't ready to share her secret either. The trust between them was beginning to crack. There was too much at stake. Both of them knew that this was a turning point, one wrong move, and everything could fall apart. The village's future rested in their hands. Kwame and Akosua walked together down a lush village path, their feet crunching the leaves beneath them. The sun was just starting to set, casting long shadows on the ground. They whispered quietly, speaking of the strange happenings that had taken place. The village was changing, and not for the better. They both knew something had to be done. The curse, the secrets, the lies, they were all connected. Akosua looked up at the sky, her mind racing. What was the true purpose of the necklace? Could it really stop the curse? Kwame's voice broke her thoughts. "We can't do this alone, Akosua. We need the village. We need the elders." Akosua nodded, but doubt lingered in her mind. She had always trusted Kwame, but now, with the power of the necklace in her hands, she wasn't sure what the right thing to do was. The weight of the village's fate pressed down on her. That night, the villagers gathered around a large fire in the village square. The flames flickered and danced, casting long shadows on the faces of the villagers. Kwabena, the elder, stood at the center of the circle, his voice low but clear as he began to tell an ancient story. It was a story of the village's origins, of the gods and spirits that had protected them for generations. But tonight, as he spoke, there was a sense of urgency in his words. The village was in danger, and Kwabena knew that the curse was real. The villagers listened intently, their faces filled with fear and wonder. Could the story hold the answers they were looking for? Kwame and Akosua sat close together, listening carefully. They knew that the answer to the village's problems lay in the ancient story, hidden somewhere between the words. The fire crackled, and for a moment, everything seemed still, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Esi walked away from a gathering of men in the village, her head held high and a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Her eyes scanned the crowd, making sure no one was watching her. She discreetly reached under her dress and pulled out a bag filled with coins, which she had secretly hidden from everyone. It was a reward from the city men, a promise of wealth and power. Esi knew that her actions were dangerous, but the thrill of what she had done made her feel alive. The villagers had no idea what was going on behind their backs. As she walked back to her hut, Esi's mind raced. She had taken a risk, but it was worth it. The city was calling to her, offering things that the village could never give her. But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a terrible mistake. If the elders ever found out, it could ruin everything. The village depended on its traditions, and Esi was going against them. But the lure of the city life was too strong to ignore. The royal palace stood tall and proud in the heart of the village, its golden roof gleaming in the sunlight. The chief's daughter stood in front of the palace, dressed in colorful royal kent. Today was an important day, the day of a grand ceremony that would decide the village's future. The young women stood with poise and grace, each one ready to play their part in the ceremony. Their hearts raced, knowing that their actions would be closely watched by all the villagers. As they stood there, Akosua couldn't help but notice how the city men had started to influence even the royal family. The chief's daughters seemed so caught up in their new clothes and appearances, forgetting the true purpose of their roles. Akosua's gaze met that of her sister, and she couldn't help but wonder if they were ready for what lay ahead. The tension in the air was palpable. The village was at a crossroads, and the ceremony would either bring peace or lead them further into chaos. The village square was filled with nervous energy as the girls of the village lined up for the Virgin Maiden test. They stood in their best clothes, their hands trembling with anxiety. The air was thick with tension, as each girl prepared to dip her hands into the sacred pot. The test was an ancient tradition, one that determined the purity of a girl's heart. It was a rite of passage that no one could escape, and each girl knew that the outcome would shape her future. Akosua stood at the front of the line, her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at Oma, who stood beside her, equally nervous. They exchanged a quick look, both wondering if they were ready for what was about to happen. The test was more than just a ritual, it was a symbol of the village's strength and purity. But as each girl dipped her hands into the pot, the air seemed to grow heavier. Something was wrong. The village was changing, and the test didn't feel like it used to. What if the curse had already taken hold? Kwame stood face to face with an elder in the village, both of them staring at a large stone sculpture that had been placed in the square. The elder's face was stern, filled with worry. "This is no ordinary time," the elder said gravely. "The signs are all around us. The village is at a crossroads, and the curse is closer than we think. You must be prepared for what is coming." Kwame nodded, his mind racing with the elder's words. The stone sculpture was said to hold the key to the village's future, but no one knew exactly how. The villagers had always believed that it was a symbol of protection, but now, it felt like a warning. Kwame looked at the elder with new determination in his eyes. They had to act fast. The village's survival depended on them solving the mystery of the curse before it was too late. Akosua stood near the village market, her eyes narrowed as she watched a group of men huddled together in the corner. They were whispering, and though they tried to be discreet, Akosua could tell something was off. The air around them seemed thick with tension, and the whispers only made her more suspicious. Who were these men? And why were they speaking so secretly? As she watched from a distance, she saw Esai among them, talking animatedly with one of the men. Akosua's heart sank. She knew that Esai had been meeting with the city men, but this was something different. Akosua's suspicion grew. Could Esai be part of something bigger, something that could destroy the village? Akosua turned away, her mind spinning. She had to find out more, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed help, and she needed to act fast. The village hall was filled with music, laughter, and the smell of delicious food as villagers gathered for a grand banquet. The tables were piled high with dishes, and the villagers danced in celebration. But in the back, Akosua and Esai stood together, whispering quietly. The tension between them was palpable. Both of them knew that something was about to change. They couldn't keep hiding their secrets forever. As they exchanged glances, Akosua's mind raced. What was Esai planning? And why was she so intent on meeting the city men? Akosua had always trusted Esai, but now, doubts clouded her thoughts. The banquet, meant to celebrate the village's unity, felt more like a mask hiding something darker. As the night wore on, Akosua couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The village was on the brink of a new chapter, and it wasn't clear whether that chapter would bring salvation or destruction. Kwame stood at the entrance to the village temple, his face filled with a mix of determination and worry. The curse that had plagued the village was getting stronger. The once peaceful temple now felt heavy with an ominous presence, as if the walls themselves held the weight of the village's fate. The torches flickered in the breeze, casting long shadows across the sacred space. Inside, the priest chanted ancient prayers, but even they seemed uncertain. Kwame could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. It was as if the very air had changed. He walked further into the temple, his eyes scanning the dark corners. The village's fate rested in this temple, and he was determined to find the answer, no matter the cost. But what if the curse was already too strong to defeat? A tense silence filled the village square as Kwame and Esai faced each other. The crowd stood around them, watching the heated exchange with bated breath. Esai's eyes flashed with anger, while Kwame's face was filled with concern. "You've been meeting with the city men," Kwame said, his voice steady but filled with authority. "What are you planning, Esai? You're putting the entire village at risk." Esai's lips curled into a sly smile. "You don't understand, Kwame. The village is holding us back. The city offers a chance at freedom, at power. The village doesn't deserve to hold us back anymore." Her words stung, but Kwame refused to back down. He knew what was at stake. "You're wrong, Esai," he said firmly. "The village is our home. We can't just abandon it for something that promises false hope. The curse is real, and if we don't stop it, there won't be a village left to save." The village elders gathered in a circle, their faces grim as they discussed the troubling prophecy. The air was thick with worry, and the wind howled outside the hut, as if nature itself was warning them. "The curse is more than just bad luck," one elder said softly. "It is a test of our unity. If we don't act together, we will all fall." Kwame stood at the edge of the circle, listening intently. The prophecy had been passed down through generations, and now it seemed to be coming true. The village's traditions, once strong, were being tested by forces they couldn't control. But Kwame knew that they had to act quickly. The village's survival depended on it. Akosua stood in front of an altar deep in the sacred forest, the glowing necklace held tightly in her hands. The golden light from the necklace illuminated the surrounding trees, casting long shadows on the forest floor. The air felt thick with magic, and Akosua's heart raced as she realized what she had to do. This necklace, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a burden. It was the key to breaking the curse, but at what cost? She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the necklace's power in her hands. Could she use it without sacrificing everything she loved? She had to make a choice, and it wasn't going to be easy. The village's fate rested on her shoulders, and the path forward was uncertain. Would she be able to save the village, or would the curse consume them all? Oma stood by the riverbank, staring at her reflection in the water. The image that stared back at her wasn't the person she had once known. The secret she had kept, her lies and betrayals, had changed her. She had been part of something bigger, something that threatened to unravel everything the village stood for. But now, looking at herself, Oma saw a chance for redemption. She couldn't undo the past, but she could make things right. With a deep breath, she turned away from the river. The village needed her, and it was time to stop hiding behind secrets. She would do whatever it took to help save her home, even if it meant confronting the darkness she had helped create. The sky was dark as the villagers gathered at the edge of the sacred grounds, ready for the final battle. The air was thick with tension, and the ground beneath their feet felt alive with energy. The curse had taken hold, but the villagers were determined to fight back. They would stand together, no matter the odds. Kwame stood at the front of the crowd, his eyes focused on the horizon. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The battle to save the village had begun. As the villagers gathered in the sacred forest, the wind howled around them, carrying with it the whispers of the ancestors. Kwame, Akosua, and the elders stood at the center of the circle, their faces filled with determination. The time had come to perform the ancient ritual that would either break the curse or seal the village's fate forever. Akosua held the glowing necklace tightly in her hands, its light pulsing with a strange energy. The ritual was simple in its steps, but the power it carried was immense. Kwame stepped forward, his voice steady as he began to chant the words passed down by the elders. The villagers watched in silence, their hearts filled with hope and fear. The trees seemed to bend toward them, as if listening, as the ritual continued. Akosua could feel the necklace grow warmer in her hands. It was as if the forest itself was responding to the ancient words. Would it be enough? Could they undo the damage caused by the curse? Only time would tell. As the ritual continued, Akosua couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. She glanced around, but there was no one in sight, only the shadows of the forest that seemed to stretch on forever. The air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder, but not from the villagers. It felt like unseen eyes were observing them, hidden just beyond the reach of the firelight. A chill ran down Akosua's spine. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The necklace in her hand grew brighter, and the whispers turned into an eerie chorus. The curse was reacting. The ritual was working, but something else was awakening, something dark and ancient. Akosua's heart raced as the villagers gasped in fear. Had they unleashed something they couldn't control? The power of the curse was too great to understand, but they had no choice but to press on. Out of the darkness, a figure appeared, cloaked in black. It moved silently toward the center of the ritual circle, its presence sending a wave of unease through the villagers. Akosua's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the figure. It was the same shadowy figure she had seen lurking near the village before. Its face remained hidden beneath the hood, but its eyes glowed with an eerie light, and its presence seemed to drain the warmth from the air. Kwame stepped forward, his voice firm but trembling with uncertainty. "Who are you? What do you want with our village?" The figure's voice was low and chilling as it spoke. "I am the keeper of the curse," it said. "And now, it is time for you to face its true power." The villagers gasped, fear spreading like wildfire through the crowd. What had they truly awakened? The figure raised its hand, and the ground trembled once more. A crack appeared in the earth, glowing with dark energy. The curse was stronger than ever, and the villagers could feel its weight bearing down on them. Akosua looked at the necklace in her hands, its light dimming in the face of this new power. Was this how it was meant to end? Was their village doomed to fall to the curse that had plagued them for so long? In that moment, Akosua realized that the curse wasn't just an external force, it was a part of the village's very soul. It was born from the choices of the people, the secrets they kept, and the lies they told. To break the curse, they had to face the darkness within themselves. With a deep breath, Akosua stepped forward, holding the necklace high. "We choose unity," she declared, her voice ringing out across the forest. "We choose truth. We choose to face the curse together." As she spoke, the forest seemed to quiet, and the figure in the black cloak stepped back, its power waning in the face of their collective strength. The crack in the earth closed, and the eerie glow faded. The village was not saved by magic, but by the choices of its people. Together, they had broken the curse, and with it, the darkness that had threatened to tear them apart. The villagers gathered around Akosua, her face filled with both relief and exhaustion. They had done it. The curse was gone. And for the first time in a long while, the village felt like a home once again. The sun began to rise, casting golden light over the forest, and the villagers knew that their journey was far from over. The path ahead would be long, but they would face it together. The village had survived because of the choices they made.